Welcome to a new episode of Depreciation Nation, and today we are doing another one of our favorite things where we are going to review a depreciated classic. And today's classic comes from our friend Scott. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much for having me.
But before we get to that, why don't you hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen so that you don't miss some of the most eclectic content on YouTube. Now, behind me, you will find Scott's 2001 Audi TT. It has very low miles on it, and as you can see, it is pristine. And Scott has been kind enough to allow us to review this car today. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about the car.
So I found the car in 2015. My wife went out of town for the weekend, and basically I suddenly was car shopping. I saw it at a store here in Cincinnati, and I had to have it. So I bought it and drove it home, and I haven't got the end of that from my wife since.
That is awesome. Now, you might ask how I met Scott, and I actually met Scott when I saw him driving this car, and I was like, hey, that's a nice car. And so we have been texting since, and we finally got our schedules to align, and so we are going to bring this beautiful car to you all. Now, how many miles does it have on it?
It's got about 84,700, I think.
Okay, fantastic.
Not that I'm counting.
It's miles of smiles.
All smiles, all the way through.
So this is the base car?
This is the base. This is not the Quattro, unfortunately. But I look at it, that's okay because less to fix over time.
Right.
But no, it's the base TT Roadster.
Wonderful. So anybody that is familiar with Audis is definitely familiar with the TT. They are bringing production to the end, and as they do that, I think that we're going to see prices on these climb dramatically because people are just starting to appreciate them for what they were.
And it's been a beautiful car. It's a joy to drive. I get so many comments on it. Been extremely pleased with it since the day I got it.
Fantastic. Let's go for a ride.
Wonderful.
So here we are in Scott's TT, and initial impressions are that it's quick. It does feel very quick. Any idea on horsepower?
I believe it's 185, which surprisingly is not a whole lot considering it's about a 3,000 pound car.
Right.
300 pound car. You know, it feels sprightly, I think, because the thing's just so tiny.
Right. So gearing is good. The sounds are there. The whooshes are nice. And again, you'll hear me talk over and over and over again about how it isn't all about the numbers. There are cars that are a lot faster. There are cars that are a lot more efficient, but they don't feel like this. And we were pretty consistent about feel through the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s. And then about 2015 is when we started to get that disconnect, and everything started to move to electric steering, and electric boosted this and electric boosted that. And the fact of the matter is that we brought the Taycan early on, and that car goes 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds. And if you have not experienced it, I cannot even express just how fast that is. But it doesn't feel like this. What's your favorite thing about it?
Well, I'll tell you my wife's favorite thing about it. My wife's favorite thing about this car is the seat heaters, which are wicked.
Awesome.
They are unbelievably warm. My wife loves seat heaters. You know, the thing I like about it is simply the feeling of freedom in the car. I've been in other convertibles, and you feel like you're still inside of a car.
Right.
And this really feels like almost that MG experience,
Yeah.
where it's a tiny windscreen, and you feel like you're just especially with the
something? From 2,400 RPM, it pulls strong. There goes the turbo. So the thing about convertibles is they usually consist of a car that they just cut the roof off of. And when that happens, the cars get a little soggy, and there's a lot of what we like to call chassis flex. And when you cut the roof off of a 3 Series, you can tell you cut the roof off of a 3 Series. And so what strikes me about this is that, wow, and by the way, we are lugging through third gear up this hill at 1,000 RPM, and it's very tractable power. And whereas this car had a hardtop, and whereas I am sure that that hardtop is a little bit more rigid than this, I don't feel like they just cut the roof off this car, and it feels amazingly solid for a 21-year-old car.
Yeah, that's really what I've been in love with too, because there's been no suspension issues. It just goes.
There's no rattles, there's no squeaks, there's no clunks, and you can't tell in the video, but we are really kind of putting it through its paces on the curves right here, and there's not a shudder, there's nothing.
If you ever do hear something, it's this, believe it or not, the vanity mirror cover rattles in front of me. I figured out about a month ago, if you leave it halfway open, it'll rattle, and I couldn't figure what that was.
The turbo is nice. And honestly, it will rev harder, but I don't think I need it to.
No, it'll really bang things out. I actually taught Eric how to drive a stick on this car.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, always take your 15-and-a-half-year-old out and teach him how to drive a stick on a possible future classic. That's a smart thing to do, right?
It's a memory he'll have for the rest of his life.
And his car's a stick. He's
that is
a
fantastic.
Absolute stick fan, and probably will never go back to anything else.
This is about as classic as it gets, and when I say it's about as classic as it gets, it inspires all of the feels of the old 550 Spiders and the 350 Speedsters and things of that nature, but we have modern technology for the most part. So we are actually putting on a little bit of speed right now, and it's solid. Again, not a shudder, nothing. And they really captured the essence of an old sports car with this.
Agreed. The one thing I like, it's kind of tacky, but it's this is the manually it's electric roof. It does go back with a button, but you still have to put the tonneau cover on.
Right.
So when you take the car out, if it's going to rain, you got to know, because the tonneau cover doesn't really ride well in your lap.
Drop it down into second. That was a fantastic turn.
Yeah, it's a great turn, isn't it?
So I know that prices have been going crazy with the market being what it is these days, but these cars can still be found fairly reasonable, around $6,000.
For the hardtop especially, yeah.
100,000 mile car. And you're going to need to do a little bit of maintenance, but they're solid. They've got the turbo, they've got the 6-cylinder. To be quite honest, the turbo is fine and maybe even a little bit more fun. And you had mentioned earlier that this is not a quattro, and to be quite honest, I think that makes it a little more interesting. Granted, it's front-wheel drive, but it doesn't feel like it's a front-wheel drive when you go into a turn hard and you feel that back shift. So another one on the list. If you like modern sports cars, this is your car. And so that is the Audi TT. Now, as we mentioned before, they are bringing production to an end currently as this video is produced, and I do anticipate that prices are going to climb on these dramatically very, very soon. Now, this is a car that's been on my radar. If you watch the Ford Lightning video, you'll hear me talk about how I want all of the cars that we drive, which would be 30, 40, 50 cars by now. This is a car that's been on my radar for a very, very long time. I don't think that this is a car that's going to make my collection just from the fact that I can only keep so many cars. But if this car is on your radar, I suggest you buy one now, because because prices on these are about to increase dramatically. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button at the bottom of your screen so that you don't miss more awesome content like this, and we'll talk to you soon.